My favorite quote about Dubai is that it's like a teen girl experimenting with makeup for the first time. I know that's very mean girl of me to say, but I think it's true. When I was here 3 years ago, I really lived it up. I went on an extreme sports tear, including such highlights as drifting with a world champion. Now, I'm back a couple years later with some different perspectives. In Dubai, I did a lot of rich high living. I had a friend with a penthouse, and I paid $200 for high tea at the Burj Al Arab, or world's only 6-star hotel. The problem is that that sort of stuff wears thin on a person, or at least a person like me. Now, maybe I'm only saying this because backpacking life is all I can afford, but I like backpacking life. That's the great thing about the lifestyle I live. Whereas other people would think that I'm making sacrifices, none of the other stuff that I could spend money on appeals to me. Material things appeal nothing to me, except for the fact that I need bare minimum standards to survive. Many people know that I live at home. That's good enough. I have shelter from the elements. That's all I really need, other than the basics like food, water. I'm actually a pretty easy to please person in that sense. Being back in a city like Dubai reminds me how much the high living life is something that I only do if it's free. So a lot of what I did in Dubai, and I only did a couple marquee things out of pocket. A city like Dubai, I've traveled to 101 countries now. The countries that I missed in vlog form were actually the three most important: 99, 100, and 101. I stand corrected. 100 and 101. 99 was Israel, and I did do a little bit from Israel, including the old and new city. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. But starting in Egypt, and then pretty much through until maybe even now, the Wi-Fi situation has been sketchier than normal, even in a place like Dubai. For some reason, there's free Wi-Fi everywhere, but you require cell access, and my cell's just punked out on me. Normally I'm pretty good in most places, but Dubai, my card has decided to give out on me. So what I might do is swap to my worldwide card and see if I can receive messages via that. That's the thing. If I need to, I'll drop off the face of the planet. I only do vlogging if it's convenient, but I am sad about the fact that whatever I felt is already 10 days old, I guess. Egypt, my 100th country, was November 17th. So we're more than 10 days old now. We're about 2 weeks, a fortnight old. Have my changed about things? Well, I, as normal, have attempted way more ambitious than what anyone else would attempt. I've become quite an expert at traveling under duress, which is what you have to be able to do in order to be maximally efficient on something like cruise travel. I've explained before that the cruise that I just came on was one of the cheapest cruises I've ever been on, and I've been on some cheap cruises. Every single cruise I've been on, I actually use a litmus test which I call 100 per person per activity day, or 50 per person per overall day. On a cruise itinerary, we're going to have a number of different things. We're going to have sea days, which you do nothing but cruise around on the boat, and those are transportation days. We're going to have activities where you're in port or you're going through something where the boat acts as your excursion. For example, I've done activity days through the Panama Canal, through now recently the Suez Canal, through Antarctica, through a number of canal fjords, glaciers, that sort of thing. And I count the math differently because to me sea days are just transportation days. So what I do is I divide and I use that as, I would say then if we're talking about overall days, I'm spending less than 50 to 75. If you think about how much an average person spends in a developed country, they spend more than that on rent, food, transportation. Why people always ask me how I can afford to travel, because it's cheaper to travel in a developed country, mostly speaking. Cruising is a combination of calm, relaxed days and stressful duress days. Stressful in the sense that you're often only in port for a work day, or if you're lucky and over, and you have to pack in as much as possible if you want to see the highlights. Sometimes they never intend for you to pack as much as I pack in, which is the stressful part. For example, Egypt, they reasonably expected for you on an overnight to Luxor, Karnak Temple, Valley of the Safaga Port. Safaga Port is a quieter on the Red Sea, but it's Cairo, and the Giza excursions only offer and nearby Red Sea and others. If you're doing something that the cruise ship has no itinerary for, then you know you're going way off of what they even think is reasonable to expect to do in that time. Now, what did I do? I actually did both Cairo, Giza pyramids, and Luxor within that overnight that they only expect you to do Luxor in. So that's what I mean by having a completely ambitious schedule that I think only maybe less than 5%, if at all, people on the cruise ship attempted. I would guess it's closer to less than 5%. Now, the reason why is that you incur a lot of risk doing the itinerary that I did. I'm just recovering from the number of risks that I took, but they were calculated risks, and that's what I mean, is that when you assess information like that, there's one mentality that can say this is absolutely just out of what you can expect because the cruise ship has no such itinerary. Or you can look at it and say, I spot opportunities here, but also risk. So what I did was the equivalent of going all in, a poker all in on this, because I felt my chances were good at being able to accomplish what I call the triple-double. The triple-double would be doing more and better than the cruise ship lines for the three marquee ports, which were Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. So over that 6 or 7 day span that I spent in those three countries, let me count actually, 15 to... I probably spent anywhere from a week to 10 days. I have to actually count because my brain's a little fuzzy. But yeah, let's say I had 7 to 10 days in that area of the world. What I was able to accomplish was mind-boggling just to think about it. In Israel, transited on their local transit from Haifa port to Jerusalem, Jerusalem, we were intimately in a single crevice corner of the walled city, old city of Jerusalem. That area of Jerusalem is essentially the religious focal point of the world, you could say, I guess, at least of the three Abrahamic religions. Now, as a secular person, I treat it more as just a historical landmark rather than a traditional or religious landmark, but it is what it is. I was able to visit places in the Holy City outside of the track. So Jerusalem, I actually went deep underground in tunnels that you would only be able to access from very specific points that are off the tourist map. So obviously Jerusalem is known for a couple of things: the Holy Church, the Western Wall, and the Temple of the Dome, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, focal points, I guess you could say. But other than that, we actually went into an archaeological park, which is still something that a lot of tourists access. The next day, we actually entered the same archaeological park, but we did the underground route. So we saw a part of the Western Wall, which is the holy for Jewish people, from underground, and we saw what's called the soft wall. So the soft wall is, as you can imagine, softer parts of the wall that are underground, which have been slightly overgrown by different fungi and green things. But the parts of the wall that we saw were easily over 2,000 years old. And they were tiny. And you were creeping and crawling through things, but that's a part of Jerusalem that you sort of lucked into, but very few tourists would actually go to because it's hidden. The entrance is hidden, and near the Mountain of the Olives, if someone were to ask me where was the entrance, I'd actually have difficulty telling you exactly where it is, because we walked along a path, ran into a babylicious looking Jewish yuppie Bedouin guy who looked like he was selling. At the end of the day, he actually gave us what's exclusive pass to visit that part of the wall, the soft wall, and everything else. The archaeological park, the Holy Spring, everything. And that means we actually double paid for the archaeological park. But that's something, again, you luck into. You just have an intuition about things. You attract things. Who knows what it is? I know now I'm sounding dogmatic myself. Maybe it's because I was at that city, Jerusalem. But that was just even the first port. The next port, Egypt, was where we attempted what I call the holiest or grandest of all doubles, because we did both Cairo, Giza Pyramids, Egyptian Museum route, plus the Luxor, Karnak Temple, Nile River Cruise, Valley of the Kings route. On each of them alone, I did more than what the cruise ship attempted, and together was probably 4 times more itinerary than they expected you to be able to compact. I'm going to do probably a deep dive into Egypt alone because it was country 100, but suffice to say, I think the Giza Pyramids are something that we learn a lot about in school, and to see it is a different beast altogether. There are actually 9 pyramids within a specific viewpoint that you can only access by horse carriage or camel. We actually did that, and that's something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Many people ask me what my top travel moments are after having been to 100 countries, or what's my favorite country, or questions like that. And I often have difficulty rank ordering things in that way because the answer changes depending on my mood. For example, fresh off of Egypt, I obviously rank Egypt very highly compared to other things. I'm probably still on an Egypt high, but I would still say that the Giza Pyramid's 9-pyramid view is something well worth seeing, and it's something that you have to budget probably at least a half an hour for and be comfortable with bumpy rides. So whether you're on a horse carriage or a camel, the ride is bumpy but well worth it. Of the 3 temples, there is a couple that you can go into depending on the circumstance. We entered the Mother of the King's tomb, and honestly, they're tombs without anything inside. So that means if you go to the pyramids, I would say the thing to supplement it with, that people normally supplement it with, is the Egyptian Museum. Maybe by the time you're in Egypt, they'll have moved to the new museum, but right now it's still the old Egyptian Museum. That's where most of the treasures of the pharaohs are now housed. So King Tut's gold mask that we all learn about in school is at the Egyptian Museum. Some of the mummies are at the Egyptian Museum. Everything they could find in King Tut's tomb is at the Egyptian Museum. So we were lucky because on the one day that we went, that's one of the few days of the week that the Egyptian Museum is open late. That's the only reason why this itinerary worked out, is because we went to the Giza Pyramids. We arrived about as late as you can arrive to still have a good experience. We had about 2.5 hours in the Giza complex, and I'm happy that we made it. If anything would have pushed back in any way, for example, having traffic in a city like Cairo, which is 25 million people and the most populous city in Africa, was a reality that we never faced but could have easily thrown our schedule off. You add an hour there. Let's say the Giza pyramids are actually busy like they once were or could become again, and you add another hour there. You could have easily lost that 2.5 hours and missed out on the pyramids and had to reroute and recalculate again. So yes, the itinerary I attempted was full of risks, but again, I went all in. I feel like this vlog is running long already, and I never intended to go deep into my Egypt experience, but now it's coming out. When I vlog, this is what happens. I thought I was going to do a quick 5 minutes. I've ended up doing 20 minutes now, and I'm about halfway through my Egypt and